sweet loves. Welcome to the Heroines Path podcast, a sacred space for awakening women wishing to transcend limitations, blaze their own trail, and return to divine wholeness. I'm Cece, healing priestess, transformation mentor, and spiritual coach, and I'll be your guide as we go on this quest of reclamation, activation, and ascension. Together we'll dive into heart-centered wisdom, mystical stories, illuminating tools, and masculine-feminine dynamics across the areas of life, love, and business. See this podcast as part of a soulful new pilgrimage, a journey to meet your highest self. Remember, you're a self-leading queen, and no one knows you better than you, so receive what your soul needs and leave the rest. Heroine, it's time to forget who you've been taught to be and become all that you were born to be. Let's take one another by the hand. Together, we rise. Hello, sweet loves. Welcome back to another juicy AF episode of the Heroines Path. Now, I was feeling into what I was going to share with you for this episode because I record every Monday. I love to have a little bit of routine, so I've made Mondays my recording day, and it works really well because over the weekend I have conversations, I have lots of thoughts, lots of moments to myself and moments with other people where the universe and life presents to me what I need to speak on and share. And this is a practice that I've been leaning into for a little while now, and I'm really, really enjoying it because it means way less work on my part. I don't have to sit and plan and map out for months in advance what I'm going to talk about. I'm really, really tuned into what comes up in conversations, what comes up in my own life, my own emotions. I'm very tuned into my body and how I feel, and I take the time to explore that. And honestly, every single time life moves me into the answers. So that leads me on to what this episode is all about. This past couple of days, this weekend and into the end of last week, I have been feeling into some emotions of jealousy, some feelings of judgment and insecurity. And these three emotions, this triple threat of shadow, is what we would probably term as sister wounding. Now, you may or may not have heard of the sister wound. It's a term that gets thrown around quite a lot, especially if you're on a journey of feminine awakening. And there's only so long you can go down that path before you come across sister wounding, both in your own life, and you also might be on the receiving end of sister wounding as well. The more time you spend with women in open spaces where you're sharing vulnerably, bringing your full and authentic selves to the table, the more likely you are to have things come up and be present for you. And that might be negative emotions like jealousy, judgment, and insecurity, or it might be inspiration. And you might feel excited and expansive by the women that you're meeting. Or women might feel jealous and they might begin to judge you as you go on your journey of growth. So tackling and understanding and moving through sister wounding is so important and so nourishing and healing for the feminine soul. And the reason for that is because traditionally women, thousands of years ago, would gather together, they would raise their children together. Women were seen as powerful, magical beings who represented the life, death, rebirth cycle of nature. We were seen as the physical incarnation of the goddess, of the great goddess, of which all of our feminine deities and all of the goddesses throughout history are derived from. Now, I've spoken a little bit about this on the first episode, so if you haven't listened to that, definitely go back and listen to it for a bit more historical context around why we're doing this work and why this is just so freaking important for our healing journey. But I have spoken a little bit about what happened when the world switched to a more patriarchal rule. And that meant that women had to attach themselves to men for power, for status, and for safety, to be honest, for literal safety, life and death. And that separated the women from each other and put them inside the household where they were individualized and only given any sort of status or understanding of who they were in their identity through the men that they were attached to, their father and then their husband. So fast forward thousands of years to now, and we are left with a society where women are pitted against each other. You see this all the time on TV programs. It always makes me think of like the X Factor, where the judges would always be pitted against each other, or like Meghan and Kate from the royal family, where they would be put against each other. And there's always stories about women arguing, falling out, being bitchy. And I could probably put money on the fact that when you were at school, the people that intimidated you most were not the boys, but the girls. The girls in your class, the girls in the years above. We have all got situations and memories where we feel so vulnerable and intimidated by the presence of other women. And this is something that comes up a lot. In fact, I spoke about this a lot in the second episode of the Heroines podcast, which is all about the divine feminine initiations that we walk through when we are aligned with this path. And one of those was being bullied by other women. And you may even have situations where you, if you were being genuinely, truly honest with yourself, could say that you had also bullied or intimidated other women purposefully, to raise yourself up and to try and gain some power or some control in a situation where you actually felt powerless and out of control. So let's actually look at what the sister wound looks like when it manifests in our life now, in the modern world. What does it mean for us? Well, I've already mentioned the frequencies of jealousy, insecurity, and judgment. Those are really the core emotions that we're dealing with when it comes to sister wounding. And that might show up in your life in many different ways. It might look like you don't have much trust for other women. So you don't share with them because you don't trust that they will keep what you tell them in confidence, or you don't trust their opinions or their advice. So you don't ask any questions. It might look like feeling separated from other women. So feelings of loneliness, not able to make friends with women easily, or feeling intimidated by the idea of going into a group of women. It might look like fears of rejection. So you may have tried to befriend women in the past and felt that you were rejected from the group. This is definitely something that I went through when I was really little in my primary school. Not only was I physically bullied by another girl and threatened by her, but then I was often left out of like dances in the playground or games that the girls would play. I always felt that I was a little bit left out. And that seeded a very big fear of rejection and fear of not being good enough with other women that then affected me much later on in life. And I'll talk about that in a mo. It might look like playing small in front of other women. So what we mean by playing small is keeping your gifts minimized, like not sharing and showing up to your fullest extent and to your full power. So you might know that you're really, really good at a certain instrument, for example, and you want to play it in the school show, but you held yourself back because you were scared of what the girls might do or they might laugh at you. Or maybe you really fancy somebody that you know and you want to go over and ask them out, but you're nervous of the judgment of your friends. And so it stops you from taking that inspired action and going and creating something that you deeply, deeply desire. Or it might look like you want to start your own business, or you have the idea for something within your business, but you're nervous that the women who are your peers, the women in your industry, are going to tear you down and aren't going to be supportive of your new venture. So it keeps you playing small for fear of judgment, the fear of what people are going to say. The fear of being laughed at is so visceral and real. And that can play out even when we're a grown adult. We can still have that inner child within that's just so scared to show their true gifts and talents because they don't want to stand out or play big. It might look like feeling very ungrounded. So, this is when your emotions are very tumultuous, very reactive. You constantly feel a level of tension in your body. And that's really your nervous system constantly remaining in a state of fight or flight. So, really feeling like it can't settle or get grounded because of your perceived threats. And these women that you're experiencing in your environment might not actually be threats, but you might feel that they are. And so your body can never get grounded and never settle because you're constantly measuring yourself against them or dealing with those feelings of inadequacy. And that looks like also not able to love yourself, right? So if you're dealing with feelings of inadequacy all the time, then it's really, really hard to settle into a self loving mindset or a self loving consciousness because you're always feeling that you're not good enough. You're always feeling unworthy. And so you're battling against yourself constantly. And if self love is something that's important to you, and it absolutely should be. Oh my God, I just bit my own cheek then, and then it made me lisp. It absolutely should be. Self love is the backbone, is the foundation of you blooming into your fullest expression. And if you're unable to even move into that journey or that chapter because of your fear around other women, then it's something that's going to hold you back and really impede you from stepping out into the most magical and juicy and expansive reality that you deserve and that you have the power to create, but you feel so powerless because you're missing that core essence of self love. Now, once you actually start to deal with the sister wound, once you actually start to address it, you might recognize it in yourself. And something that you might notice is that you really struggle setting boundaries with other women. So rather than feeling intimidated by them and maybe even not engaging with them, you might find that actually you go the other way and you spend too much time trying to please your female friends. You spend too much time trying to prove to them how amazing you are, or how stylish you are, or how clever or funny that you are. And you're always checking in, making sure you haven't done anything wrong, asking if they're okay with you. And you might take a lot of things personally. So if one of your friends is having a bad day and maybe they just haven't messaged in a little while, if you're dealing with sister wounding, it can be really, really difficult to know when your friends stop and you begin. So you might start to take things really personally and find yourself becoming enmeshed in their emotional reality, when in actual fact, it might not have anything to do with you. And actually, even one step further, even if it does have something to do with you, it still doesn't mean that you have to then worry and feel affected by that. You can hold your boundaries until they choose to bring that into your space. And then and only then do you need to deal with it. So having difficulty setting boundaries is another indicator that you are struggling to understand and know your worth around other women. And that also looks like inability to stand up for yourself. So if you're in a friendship, and we've all had these toxic friendships, I certainly have, where you feel intimidated by your friend, you feel unable to speak your truth, and you feel that you're walking on eggshells around them. It might not actually even be that your friend or your sister is doing anything wrong, but actually something about her energy triggers something in you that is a wounding that might go back years and years, even before you met that person. So something that happened with me because of the bullying I experienced when I was 4 or 5 years old. Whenever I would meet someone in my life who had a similar energy to that, a similar intimidating, scary energy from my perception, I would go into a very, very similar reactive response and pattern as I did when I was 4 or 5 years old. So I would shut down, I wouldn't share with anybody what I was feeling, and I would try to placate that person. So when I was younger, the girl that bullied me, I was, rather than, saying, I don't want you around me and like telling my parents and getting her to be told off or just having us separated from each other, I went the other way. I was almost obsessed with pleasing her. And I would say to my mum, she has to be at my birthday party. She has to be there. Even though my mum had started to know that, there was something a bit off with this friendship, I would demand that she had to come over and play. She had to be at my parties. And then this showed up in my relationships much later in life, where if I was intimidated by a woman or even by a man, to be honest, if I felt intimidated by that kind of energy, rather than walking away, I almost felt a pull to impress them and please them and get them to like me and keep them close. So that pattern showed up 20 or so years later, but the seeds were planted so, so young by another girl. And so we fear stepping up, we fear authority in other women. And women who are on a journey of feminine awakening, women like myself and other women who are in the industry of helping and serving and healing each other, they can appear to be very, very overwhelming when you first come across them, because they're very true and authentic in their expression. They're very open and honest with the way that they move their bodies or the way that they show up and share vulnerably. They're very edgy, I guess, in the fact that they might dance in a way that triggers you, or they might move in a way that you find yourself judging, or they might speak in a way that makes you feel inferior. And the thing with the sister wound, the thing with all wounds that is such a huge part of my work and something I'm so, so passionate about, is that our wounds are where we can gain our deepest wisdom. Our wounds are where we can gain our deepest wisdom. And so if you are experiencing feelings of jealousy or any of the things I've described in your friendships, maybe even in your relationship with female family members, or even women who you don't know but you follow online, and you've almost got this like can't look away but don't want to look, like love-hate relationship with some of the women that you follow, then these are all beautiful invitations from Source, invitations from Goddess to start healing the sister wound. And if that's you, if you recognize yourself in the things that I've shared, then you are actually the person, if you're listening to this and you're honest enough to say, you know what, those things have showed up in my life and I do recognize myself up there. And yes, I do struggle to set boundaries with my friends. And I often think that I've done something wrong. And yeah, I did have that really great idea and I didn't share it with anyone because I thought they might laugh at me. And I do see people online that I think I wish I could be like that. And it makes me feel not good enough. You know, all of those feelings, all of those emotions, they can all be traced back to jealousy, judgment, or insecurity. And then further still, jealousy, judgment, and insecurity can all be traced further back to fear. It's all fear-based response to life, or responses to life. Fear-based responses to what the universe is presenting you with. And the interesting thing is, the more you avoid it and resist it, the more the universe will present it to you. The more women like that you'll see, the more toxic friendships you'll get into. Because this is the universe, this is life's way of trying to offer you what you need to heal and awaken. Because once you can actually look at what's happening in your life, those relationships, those situations, circumstances, with an honest and responsible approach, then you can understand that you are having power bestowed on you by life. And you are being chosen as somebody who gets to change this, not only for your friendship group and your relationship with women now, and maybe your clients or your family members, but for women going forward. Because like I've said before, there is a sea change happening right now where women are awakening all over the world and reclaiming their power. And they are reigniting their deepest desires and claiming their voices and speaking their truth. And they are treating their bodies like sacred temples rather than like the trash bags attached to floating heads that we usually do growing up. And we are reclaiming everything that it means to be a living and breathing embodiment of goddess energy. And if you're listening to this, then I would assume that that is something that feels important to you and that's pulling you and calling to you. And you want to embody the goddess in your life. You want to be the goddess of your own life. And you want to understand how you can fully get there and what it takes to fully get there. And so this is why I want to share, this is what I want to share with you next on that note that's so, 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 so important. It is not about spiritual bypassing. And what I mean by spiritual bypassing is it's not about recognizing that you have these things showing up in your life and then saying, oh, yeah, people on Instagram really trigger me. I think I'm just going to delete the whole app and that will make me feel better. Or, yeah, my friendships are like really stressful for me right now. I think I'm just going to go and do yoga and then I'll feel better, you know? Or even if it's you on the receiving end, yeah, women are really throwing so much judgment at me. Maybe I need to keep myself smaller. Maybe I need to be a bit less controversial online, or maybe I shouldn't share my opinion next time because like I got so much um, feedback or like even hate for it. You know, like I've got people that troll me on Instagram. Who create fake accounts with no profile picture and send me messages about my weight and about my work and about my business, about how I look and and if I made that mean something about me and said, okay, well, to make myself feel better, I'm just not going to show up online anymore, then think about the disservice I would not only be doing to myself and to my own soul and my one life that I get to live right now in this incarnation, but I would be doing such a disservice to the thousands of other people who watch my content, love what I share, listen to this podcast, take all the little golden nuggets that I share away and actually implement them in their own lives. The people who right now are watching me and going, yes, like one day I can't wait to work with Cece. Like everything she shares, I just relate to it so much. And I can't wait to jump into one of her one-to-one containers or one of her group courses or join her membership at the Heroine Circle. All of the people who are considering, if I just stopped showing up because I let those people, I don't know if it's a man or a woman, from the comments about weight, etc., I would assume potentially that it's a woman, but I actually don't know for sure, the people that troll me. And it's not all the time, but it just kind of comes in waves occasionally. If I let that mean something about me and decided to play small and, make a story in my life that surrounds that, then so many people would miss out. The world would be a worse off place. Whereas if all of us are showing up in our fullest power and our fullest expression and sharing our gifts and offering our soul in whatever manifestation that looks like for you. For me, it looks like my coaching business and showing up and empowering women and helping them to reclaim their power whilst not sacrificing their feminine essence. But for you, it might look like something completely different. But if you weren't showing up and sharing that, the world would be a worse off place. And so I want you to know that your heart is big enough and your strength is deep enough and your voice is powerful enough to go on this voyage into the unknown, to start exploring these deeper wounds where, I'm not going to lie, it's uncomfortable and it's icky and it's awkward and it's triggering at times, when you have to sit with yourself honestly and say, wow, like I really am jealous of that woman. Like these feelings of jealousy, like jealousy is such a visceral, uncomfortable emotion in our body. It sits so horribly in our body, doesn't it? It's like this pit, like this gnawing pit at the bottom of your stomach, and it makes you do crazy things like go Instagram like scrolling at 3 a.m. and like just not take care of yourself and like constantly go into these spirals of like addictive behavior. And insecurity just sends you down. It's like a heavy weight on your shoulders. And judgment is just the portal to our deepest desires. Like if you can reframe judgment as being a portal to your desires, then it actually becomes the most useful and valuable tool. If you find yourself watching a woman online and you're judging the way that she's expressing herself or showing up, or how free she is or how powerful she is or how soft and sensitive she is, then actually you're just judging a part of yourself, because you are just a part of the whole. You are a drop of the whole, and the whole is in you. So when you see someone show up and you're judging them, you're actually just judging aspects of yourself that maybe you've repressed and buried so far that you don't even recognize them as being part of you, but they are. And vice versa, when somebody judges you, rather than taking it personally and finding yourself becoming triggered and maybe getting defensive and angry and feeling you need to defend your choices, you can just know and sit safe in the knowledge that that judgment of you is really just a gateway to that person's desire, and that they're judging you because deeply they actually want what you have, or they want to be able to express themselves the way that you do, And people just don't know any different. Women don't know any different. We're brought up in a paradigm, in a world that is not created with feminine beings in mind at all. It's created to make us feel that we're against each other, to make us feel that we don't deserve to join together in unity and in power. And when women do come together, when women do gather in circle and share vulnerably and witness each other and support each other and celebrate transitions, life transitions, or transitions of the moon each month, or whatever it might be, when women get together and genuinely celebrate each other and allow ourselves to be seen, that's where true alchemy and transformation can take place. A huge part of the heroine's journey, once you've been down on your descent, once you have experienced a dark night of the soul where everything crumbles, maybe a really painful breakup or a divorce, or maybe you were fired or made redundant from the job that you loved, or you went for some promotions and you didn't get them and it caused you to reconsider your life path. Or maybe you were in an accident, or somebody you know was in an accident, or you lost somebody that you loved, and you go on this dark night of the soul or this descent, and you realize that everything that you held dear, everything that you thought made you successful is actually just an illusion. And that was just your ego chasing and chasing and chasing because it didn't feel good enough just the way it was. And once you move through that descent, and once you meet all the parts of yourself that you've repressed and forgotten about and disembodied from, then the next part of the heroine's journey is an urgent yearning to reconnect with the feminine. An urgent yearning to reconnect with the feminine. And that means your sisters. That means other women. That means feminine-led activities and practices and hobbies. And that means the feminine within you. And you will find yourself on your spiritual journey craving time with other women where maybe you've never craved that before. And it's so, so healing. And I speak from experience because I have been held in many groups with other women now. And I speak from experience when I say that it is so healing and nurturing to say how you genuinely feel and have women in circle with you or in a group with you or on a Zoom with you that don't judge you and that just ask you questions and allow you to go deeper and allow you to feel your feelings without making it mean anything. And so what this looks like for you in your friendship groups is when your friends come to you and say, I'm really struggling with something. I'm just feeling so insecure. I'm not happy with my body right now. Instead of saying, oh my God, no, you look great, babe. You look great. Actually say, put your hand on your heart or give them a hug and just hold space for them without judgment or without trying to fix and make them feel better. Just hold space and say, I can totally understand how you feel. Tell me more about that. When did it start? Where's it come from? When's the earliest time you remember feeling that way? What would make you feel better right now? What do you need right now? How can I support you? I see you. I hear you. I'm hearing you. I love you. Yeah? So those are some beautiful ways to just begin allowing your friends to move through perhaps their own sister woundings in your presence. And then one step further is how can you take those questions and apply them to yourself? So this is how I moved through sister wounding myself. Like I say, I was bullied by a girl when I was younger and I was really shy and homesick and intimidated by other girls and never felt like I was included or good enough. And so I developed a really false sense of confidence. I became brash and loud and I guess overly confident to mask my insecurities as a teenager. And I had very chaotic emotions and I used to shout a lot and get angry and aggressive when I felt like my authority was being threatened. Very big shadow side of queen consciousness, that kind of princess consciousness who has a tantrum and says, I want. And that was definitely me. And then I was in a relationship in my early 20s and I slid back down to exactly how I was when I was younger. I was super codependent and very insecure and very struggled to set boundaries and struggled to stand up for myself or say what I truly needed in that moment. And so once that relationship ended, I did the same thing again, bounced back and went overtly confident and actually borderline intimidating. I used to actually enjoy being able to intimidate other people. I enjoyed the fact that people used to say, "Don't get in an argument with Cece. That's not going to end well for you." I used to enjoy that. It gave me a power kick, a sick power kick, because I didn't feel powerful and I didn't feel like I had control. So I needed to force that in myself. And I was this dark, twisted shadow self of the queen rather than the whole integrated true queen who loves to raise other women up and celebrate them and push them forward in front of herself because she knows she doesn't need the limelight because she is the fucking limelight. Yeah. And the way that I moved through that was I took responsibility for how I wanted my relationships with other women to feel. I took responsibility for how I wanted to show up in the world. I claimed it. I started to notice and do my shadow work every time I felt jealous, every time I felt myself judging another woman, every time I felt insecure, I would sit with it. I wouldn't go, "Oh, let me put some music on and just like go off to yoga and I'll feel better." Or let me just unfollow her because and I'm not saying that unfollowing people can't be a really useful tool. Sometimes you need to unfollow them temporarily whilst you resolve your own shit. But that's not the solution. That's a temporary fix to give you the spaciousness to be able to resolve your own shit. And so shadow work looks like actually tracking the feeling in your body. What is that? Why do I feel that way? Where's that coming from? What is it that's triggering that? Why do I feel that way in her presence? What does she have that I don't think that I have or that I don't feel that I have? When was the first time I ever felt like this? What does this person have to show me or teach me? Or the simple question, what's here for me? And so over this past weekend, like I said at the beginning of this episode, I've been feeling into some sister wounding coming up that I haven't felt in ages. Feeling some jealousy, feeling some insecurity. And so I sat with it. And it's funny because I'm going live on Wednesday on a fellow sister's Instagram to talk about the sister wound. And so, of course, the universe and life sends me some sister wounding to work through so that when I show up on this episode and I show up on that live, I'm fully embodied and integrated and living, breathing embodiment of my work. And I can speak so viscerally and so genuinely about how I moved through it because I've literally moved through it this weekend. By taking responsibility for how I want my relationships with other women to feel and by taking my power back. So if I feel jealous of someone or feel insecure in their presence, that means that they have so much power to affect how I feel. And that's not how I want to live my life. I want to take my power back. I want to make myself whole again, like the Atomic Kitten song. I want to make myself whole again. So I sit with it and I ask myself, well, what is it that they've got that I think that I don't have? Why am I feeling this way in their presence? When did this start? What could I do that would allow me to feel everything that I think that they have? Which needs of mine could I meet right now? And I realized that I was being triggered by women who I felt were really embodied and expressed in their femininity and their inner goddess. And so when I sat with that and I asked myself those questions, what I realized was that because I've just finished holding space inside my group program, Sacred Union School, where I was very much in my masculine because I was holding the space. I was the one holding the space and creating that chrysalis for transformation. I was the one asking questions. I was the one penetrating my clients and getting to the core of their issues so that they could heal and transform. And what I realized that life was presenting me with was just little nudges to say, now it's time for you to go back into your goddess consciousness. Now it's time for you to go back into your feminine practices and for you to really spend time nurturing you. And so once I started doing that and prioritized my practices, I moved all my calls to 10 a.m. so that I don't start working until 10 each morning, and gave myself the spaciousness to be able to actually dive into those practices. And I also showed up in some of the female-led groups that I'm in and ask for some inspiration around practices so that I could, be inspired as to like, okay, what am I going to dive into this week? Is it going to be some movement, some guided meditations? Am I going to do some breath work? Am I going to do some journaling? What do I feel called to do? And I already feel so much better and so much less jealous and insecure around the people that were triggering me. Because truly loves, it was never anything to do with them. It was always everything to do with me. And this is what I want to leave you with, okay? It's never anything to do with them. It's always everything to do with you. And if somebody is going out of their way to be horrible to you and to intimidate you and to try and assert their power over you, you still have the choice. You have the choice both to recognize that it's about them and that they're wounded and that they're struggling and using the only strategy that they know. And you also have the choice to set a boundary and walk away. So you always have the choice. You are always choosing. As a feminine being, as a heroine, you're always choosing. You are here to choose your paradigm. You're here to choose the beliefs that serve and the beliefs that no longer serve. You're here to choose the stories that support the destiny that you're living into. And you're here to choose whether you put on a suit of armor and pretend that nothing gets past you and block yourself from having deeply nourishing and healing relationships with other women and being the person in your lineage who heals the sister wound once and for all, or embracing true, heartfelt, genuine vulnerability and allowing yourself to open up and be supported by women and by sisters, just like they have been for thousands of years. You get to be the one that breaks the chain. You get to be the one that sees a beautiful mirror and reflection of your own relationship to your own inner feminine in the relationships you have with women around you. By doing this work, by recognizing when the sister wound shows up, and by prioritizing your love, your open heart, rather than letting fear, judgment, jealousy, and insecurity lead the way. That episode was juicy and expansive and so healing to speak about, especially because the sister wound has been something that's been present for me over the past few days. It feels amazing to really anchor into how we heal this, how we move through this, and also the deeper reasons why. If you loved this episode, if you enjoyed it, if you took a golden nugget from it and some heart-centered wisdom that you're going to apply to your own life, then it would mean everything to me if you would share this episode with a sister, with somebody who you think needs to hear it. And if you post anything about it on your Instagram stories, then tag me so I can celebrate, repost, and love up on you. And I will speak to you again in the next episode. Sending you so much love, as always.